talking about the presentation next to the Central Region meeting. So right now it's you and me. Potentially, Matt's going to reach out to Fran or Don as far as a PC member. Angie's going to review the presentation that Laura sent to us, and I forwarded it to you guys on Monday. And then Angie, once it's done, will send a copy of that to Barb and copy you and me.
Okay. Yes, I'm just looking for a.
Sounds good.
A real life piece of paper to write that down on, so I don't forget to do it once I get off the phone or off the video with you all.
And Barb, does that work for you?
Yeah, like I said, I need to check in with our regional manager to check on the deadline of when I need those.
Okay. Just let us know.
Names. I mean, we can always leave them blank, but I'm emailing him right now. So
Jay, Barb would like to have a meeting then with you and me and her to kind of go over stuff in preparation for the meeting. Dan's father passed away, so he probably will not be.
Oh, okay. I
so
have
Barb's
some time on Friday.
What was that on Friday?
I have some time on Friday, Craig.
Okay. I do too. So Barb, let us know what works.
yeah, okay, I'll work that out with you guys offline.
Thanks, Barb.
Okay. All right. Then
that meeting is 4 o'clock on Tuesday next week, right?
Barb, do you have the confirmation on that answer?
I just have to look.
That's what I have on my calendar. So
I have 4:30 on my calendar.
Tuesday, October 13th at 4 p.m. It will be a virtual meeting hosted via WebEx. A meeting link will be provided when the committee packet is sent out.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know actually where we are on the agenda. So I know there are at least 3 or 4 things on the agenda, the last I heard, and I am totally not in the loop on it, but
Barb, will that packet and the call-in info be posted to Bowser's website?
Usually it is. We're really good now about our regular board meetings, our board committee meetings. I think we've been doing a better job. So usually the link is posted now for those board committee meetings. But I will for sure send it if it's not.
Okay, thanks.
okay. Anything else to say regarding that? So then we have to talk about the budget some more, but there was an attachment in the email I sent yesterday that outlines what needs to be in the watershed-based implementation funds work plan. So Craig, you had sent that to me. I don't know if there's anything more anything from that attachment you want to highlight to the group before we talk about the potential budget?
I don't necessarily have anything additional. Barb had gone over this with us at our last steering committee meeting. She was nice enough to share that with the group, and so I thought I'd make sure to include that so the steering committee can review it. I don't know if anybody has questions on it. I'm guessing everybody's read it word for word. Just looking at here, Barb, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to it.
Yeah, so for anybody who's had a competitive clean water fund grant, it'll be similar. We have a process called a budget request, which is similar to putting in an application for competitive clean water fund grants, because our system's only able to do stuff, our old system's only able to do stuff a certain way. So it's the budget request is kind of like you're putting in your application, and then you'll work on the work plan once the grant gets approved. So you put the budget request in and the grant gets approved, and the grant goes on its merry way to get signed by folks while the work plan's being developed. The only difference for watershed-based implementation funding is we require annual milestones. So just so we know you're making progress, just because for a lot of areas of the state, they haven't dealt with this amount of money before, and we want to make sure they're making progress. So it's mostly just for us to be able to have a conversation with you guys when we're a year into the project, saying, are you actually making progress on each of these items? One thing I could do, and it could be at the next meeting, or Dan could do it at the next meeting too, is just to talk about the budget request will be, and the work plan will probably be less detailed than what we probably need to determine eligibility of items. So as long as it's like, we need to have, we'll need some, a plan reference to your implementation section of your plan, and then we'll need to know if the types of things you're proposing to do are just eligible based on our policy. And for those of you who have done Metro things, like, what we're actually looking for. We don't, and in this case, it would also need to kind of, you guys decide this isn't a priority area. So we'll need to verify that. We don't, it'll be up to Dan as your BC, but we probably don't want super detailed stuff in, your budget request and work plan to offer you a little more flexibility. But we probably will need those details somewhere. What other groups have done is like attached another document. So if, like this spreadsheet that you're working on today, it might be that we need to add one column to it for a plan reference. And as long as we know what priority areas you are and water resources you're working on and what types of BMPs. So it might be you're going to do structural BMPs in this area, and these are the types of structural BMPs that you're doing, like that is probably the level of detail. But we can talk more about that. It's more important that you guys spend your time today actually talking about what you are going to do. And then when we get to that point, we can just tell you what are the other things, the other details that we need just to check eligibility. I don't know if anybody has questions. I tried to talk really fast. So if you haven't had your coffee, you're in trouble.
I did want to note that Susanna from Chisago County and Derek from Isani County have joined us, that they're also on the call now. So I think we've
Mike
got.
Kinney is also, I believe.
Okay, is he he's the 715 number
Correct.
down here. Okay.
So Emily, you have a board member that wanted to attend the board committee or the board meeting where they approve it?
She definitely said she wanted to attend the board meeting where they approve it.
Okay, because it'll barely be talked about at the board meeting, like where all the presentation and the conversation about the plan, and if there's any questions, will happen at our Central Region Board Committee next week. And then people are kind of disappointed when they go to the full board meeting because they're like, oh, the committee recommended it. Okay, let's just make it happen. And maybe they'll ask one or two questions. So like, it's not just so you can warn them that it's as far as sitting through a whole board meeting and feeling like their time is wasted, just might want to let them know that, and they might be better to sit in on the committee meeting next week if they want to hear more about the planning process and more questions from board committee members.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sure she will want to attend that one. So, okay, I'll keep looking for an email of how to call in for that and everything. Should probably be coming out soon.
Okay. So the big thing that we need to talk about then is a continuation of conversation about the budget. And I don't have a fancy way to do this like last time. Last time we had that polling feature that we used to get a feel for where the group felt like money should be allocated. And then the planning team looked at those preferences and kind of massaged the budget a little and, to reflect what people had, where people thought the funds should go. But then had quite a bit of conversation about what the ag outreach and the education programs might look like and which pot of money the funding would come from for various activities. So I think it might be most useful if I just pull up that spreadsheet. If you want to pull it up on your own computers, then you'll be able to scroll up and down to see the lines that you want to see versus being stuck waiting for me to scroll up and down. But I'll pull it up on my computer and then share it with everybody in case you don't have your copy easily accessible. And there we go. Okay, so can everybody see it okay now? If I roll over. So let me see if I could maybe shrink this a little bit so that we can see more of it at once. That might help. I realize that this is too tiny to actually be able to see the words, but maybe then I can at least highlight what some of the proposed changes were. Okay, just kidding. Let me make it slightly bigger because there. Okay. So looking at what people had said, we had that, you know, kind of polling feature, like, do you think this should be fully funded, not at all funded, half funded? And then when you're looking in this column right here that's got the yellow highlights in it, basically the planning team looked at, you know, where did the median percentage end up landing, and kind of tried to recommend a funding value that was close to about what that amount was. With the exception of some of these things like Mary Jo's position, it would make, if it's a 3-year position and we've already got it funded for 1 year, it makes most sense to just fund it for, you know, for 2 years versus to fund it at 89%. So there was a little bit of massaging of numbers and percentages of funding. But basically this is one possible way that could make all the numbers work, that could make it come out to a balanced budget. And the big questions were related to ag outreach, ag conservation planning, and general education and outreach, and wanting to make sure that everybody in the group is kind of in agreement about what kinds of activities might happen. And does somebody from the planning team want to step in and speak more eloquently than me? I'm sorry, my brain is not in its normal place today. Jamie and Craig, I know that the two of you had done a bit of updating on this.
Yeah, so maybe I can orient just a little bit.
Sorry.
And Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, but in column M, there's a yellow highlighted percentage and a percentage that's not highlighted. The one that's not highlighted is the outcome of our survey that we did at our last meeting.
Correct.
The yellow highlighted is the recommendation of the planning team for what percentage funding we should shoot for. In column N, next to that, you see a couple struck through numbers. That's sort of our revision process. And then at the bottom, kind of a landing point for a final number as to what we felt would be a good funding level. And then way over at column AO, I think that is, there are some deliverables, and I think that's going to lead us into the discussion of the shared services positions and how they're going to relate to each other and what they're actually going to mean. But I think first we should talk about the numbers for everything else. Does that make sense, Craig? Others?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll continue to kind of walk through this, starting at the top with the first item that's, yeah, row 4 there. So that's the shared services for the ag outreach. And we've talked about this is Mary Jo Youngbauer's position now. That position's funded through 2021, so we don't need 100% funding for that. And that's why it's not at the 89% or 100% level, it's at 70% level.
However, it does look like actually the number has been bumped back up to 250.
That's right, so we're higher than 70, maybe lower than 89, but I haven't done the math.
Oh, Jamie, that was the one where we discussed, so we would fund that position for 2 years, and then there'd be about $50,000 left over for the ag agronomist outreach position. So we're
Right.
looking at line items, I guess I use it for the shared service, and then line item number 102, which is the fourth one down there. We talked about the ag outreach positions are fully funded at 100%, which is basically, if I'm correct on that, it's a half-time position for 2 years. And then we looked at the watershed conservation planner position fully funded through 2023, and that would leave us about $50,000 or so left over for having an agronomist on a contract basis. And that was a big part of our discussion today. Is that how you guys took as a planning team, Angie, Jay, and others?
Yes, because
Mike?
originally we were talking about funding this at a lower than 250 amount, but that would only cover Mary Jo. And then we were reflecting the fact that the group all really wanted to have somebody above and beyond Mary Jo to have an agronomist or a couple of contract agronomists. And so, yeah, that's my memory that this whatever, we bumped it back up to 250 because then that would include both of those roles.
And I talked to Mary Jo about this since our PT meeting on Monday, and she agreed that if we had the education outreach component, that half-time person approximately, and we had an agronomist, she felt that would be a very strong three-headed approach to getting a lot of conservation work done in the watershed and the ag side. We could really tap into a large amount of federal dollars, and we did put the minimum match in there in that cell, like 012 of 126.5. That's the match we need for the watershed-based implementation funds. Her and I, after reviewing this and felt with that approach moving forward, we could really dovetail into a lot of different programs, whether it's standard USDA NRCS programs or other type of federal or local programs that the conservation plan could work on. So.
Yeah, I think that match is an important point for everybody in the room, is that would be the match for the entire grant. So none of the other programs, none of the other partners would be providing match, at least the way we're looking at it today.
We did have a discussion. We felt the $450,000 is an awful big chunk of cost share dollars because it's the unknown at this time. Angie, I'm getting dizzy watching you walk through the building. We did have a good discussion about the $450,000 of federal programs to get implemented, and
Sorry, my son just started his classroom meeting very loudly and like 10 feet away from me, and so I had to move to another room.
No, that's fine. So
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons.
Did you and Jamie have some, I can't see the screen very well, even with my cheaters on. What did you and Jamie decide in terms of numbers for that $450K, or how we're going to deal with that if we wanted to shift some of that to other activities like prioritization work?
Jamie, you want to take the lead on that one?
Yeah, so we reduced it, Jay. And for everybody else, this is N12 or so. We had it at $450,000 for ag BMPs, and we reduced it twice, now down to $375. And that $50,000 we moved up to the first item, shared services for ag. Because, as Craig said, it just seemed like too much funding, $450,000 for doing those ag practices in the first year or two.
We're very confident that, I mean, if we look at, and we had a good discussion, the PT, and Angie, feel free to interact here, and the whole group, please, that was part of the discussion on Monday. We feel that, I mean, 90+% of the time for the shared service educator position, that fourth yellow area, at $100,000, 90% of that will easily go towards ag outreach, ag rural outreach. So we're really looking kind of at those first three items as being one big budget item. And so we're looking at, 250, another 375 plus the match, which makes that line item $500,000, plus the next 100,000, we're looking at about an $850,000 chunk of our budget in those first three line items. And that really hits hard the ag outreach component, the agronomist, conservation planner to get the plans written, and the federal dollars brought in, and then the implementation is still a good $500,000 that with the match. So Our hope is the SWAs get completed. We made that a high priority down below. Between the SWAs getting completed, the outreach component, the agronomist, and the conservation planner will be set up very well for years 3 and beyond to get a lot of work going in the ag sector.
Craig, is there flexibility there? For example, if one of our partners is, any of the partners are not successful in getting clean water fund applications to do a priority project, that we might be able to use some of that 450 for those, currently identified shovel-ready projects that could use up potentially
Definitely,
a portion of
yes.
that 450?
That's what, to me, or that 375, I guess is what it actually is, Jay. Right now it's 375 plus the match of the 125 is easy math for the $500,000 line item there. That we need those. We need those shovel-ready type projects in years 1 and 2 to really get this thing up and running. So I know we have a big backlog. We had a staff meeting this morning. We have a big backlog in some direct drainage to St. Croix stuff. We did put a Clean Water Fund grant application in. So, if we get the Clean Water Fund grant, great. We're hopeful we do because we have a big backlog of projects. And if we don't, we'll be coming because this is direct drainage to St. Croix was a high priority for us in this project, also looking to do projects. So, and I know Mike Kinney kind of sounded like he had the same stuff down at Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District.
Do we have an estimated total of what shovel-ready projects we have that, if aren't funded under current clean water applications, that would potentially need some watershed-based funding?
I could get that at my local level. I obviously wouldn't have that at the watershed level.
I'd be curious because if all those totaled up is, we only really need the 375, then that becomes a non-issue about reducing that 450. But if we have less luck than normal for clean water fund apps and we have a bigger demand, I think we might want to have a conversation about having some flexibility to be able to shift those dollars if necessary.
I think that's a good point, Jay. And I had a good discussion with Dan Fabian, who then I know went to Barb. Bowser's looking at awarding Clean Water Fund grants at the December 17th Bowser board meeting. So Bowser packets will come out roughly a week before then, December 10th or so. So we have, obviously it's good timing for us to have good preliminary discussion today as far as some pinning the budget numbers where we think they should go. But we don't have to have a budget approved and ready to go to the policy committee meeting, I believe, Jamie, until January. That's kind of our goal, isn't it, right now?
Right.
So we'd have a window to make adjustments on our budget.
Yeah, I think that gives us a good timing that we could have a steering committee meeting there. Okay, late December, mid to late September, early January. It's okay. Here's what we know. Obviously, this is a 2 to 3 year budget we're looking at right now. We'll have about 2.5 years for this budget through 2023. So a lot of the work that comes out of the shared services type program should generate hopefully a lot of projects in years 2 and 3, which is a good thing. My hope is we're coming into the next biennium budget and we're going to have a large request of large backlog of projects ready to go that have been approved for not only these funds but other federal type source funds as our match. But yeah, we'll have a lot better idea hopefully after that December 17th Bowser board meeting.
Cool.
So maybe, sorry, Craig, I meant to unmute myself and I accidentally muted you. Don't take that personally.
I was shocked. He said the host muted you. I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess I talked too much."
No, it was a slip of the hand. I was just thinking
meant
that
to mute me.
Huh? I know if I was going to mute anybody, it would totally be Jay. I was thinking perhaps I could just kind of verbally walk through what the amount of money is that we're proposing to spend on these different activities, and then maybe we can go through the rest of the steering committee and kind of check in with everybody how you're feeling about the way this budget looks. So right now, what we have in front of us is a proposal to spend $250,000 on shared ag, conservationist, and agronomist services. So this would include funding Mary Jo's position after the current funding runs out and hiring or contracting with an agronomist or a couple of agronomists to do direct outreach to farmers. There would be $375,000 going toward ag BMPs, which could also be used for farmer-led councils or test plots potentially. And there would be additional match funds coming from federal funds. We are talking about spending $100,000 on a shared education program to expand the current education program that's only serving Washington County to serve the entire basin. And it would do both ag and urban outreach, but there would probably be a lot more ag outreach in the northern part of the basin. Correct. $225,000 for cost share for any kind of green infrastructure or BMPs happening on developed or developing land. Looking at a relatively small amount, around $40,000 for wetland restoration. Relatively small amount, $25,000 to work with LGUs to set shoreline view corridors. And $150,000 to complete, how many would that cover? 5 sub-watershed analyses?
Yeah, I think it's 5.
Okay. And that would get us to 1.2 million, which is approximately the amount of money that we're expecting to get through the watershed-based implementation funds. So I guess at that point in time, since primarily only the planning team members have been talking, I'd love to hear from everybody else on how you feel about the way that's looking currently, if that feels like it would meet some of the goals that we outlined as a group and meet your local needs as well.
The 20 the sub watershed work is what? Is that $150,000?
Yes.
Okay. So we're engaging Bowser along with some board members to address this policy issue about monitoring stuff. I would also like to encourage the group to just revisit. I thought we had a pretty good understanding based off of the years worth of monitoring by PCA and others, RAPs, of where our focus area is. The direct drainage seemed like a good thing. I'm quite sure that our board would be reluctant to start reducing implementation dollars. And I suspect there might be other policy committee members as well. The ag outreach piece too, it's not exactly the way I understood it on Monday. The scale issue is really agronomic conservation practices. And I want to confirm also that Mary Jo's focus will be not identifying waterways and structural BMPs, but conservation planning in terms of cropping systems and things like that. So if I can get a response, I appreciate it.
Yeah, Mary Jo is a certified conservation planner, and she does whole farm planning, Mike, with everybody. If that includes structural BMPs, it does include structural BMPs, but she looks at everything ecological and engineering on the farms. The component that we brought in with the agronomist would be just that, the agronomy side of things. The nutrient management, she has nutrient management background. But I concur with you on the need. We don't need to follow all of NRCS standards on the agronomy side of things. So I think it would be strong to have that agronomist there to assist her with those components and be able to work with the producers on those things. So no, every time we do this is whole farm planning on these projects. I mean, obviously if there's someone who wants to do just a structural BMP for us and we write the plan for it that way, but it's a whole farm plan written.
Yeah, this is
okay, because I think, yeah.
And I actually also was looking through the plan, and our deliverable for year 1 and 2 on the ag side. So we do actually have measurable outcomes for these. We're targeting 300 acres of improved soil health, reduction of nitrogen and pesticide pollution. We're targeting 450 pounds of phosphorus reduction and 150 pounds of those within the watersheds of regionally specific lakes or streams or rivers. And so to me, the level of staffing and the cost share amount, I feel sets us up to get close to, if not achieving those goals. So I think part of the challenge with the conversation we've had so far has been just about dollars and not about our obligations for what we're delivering. And so I think we need to bring those two together as soon as possible. And that, I think, will also get to Mike's question about, when we talk about the 5-step watershed analysis, which areas are we going to target? I agree with him that the direct drainage to the St. Croix is the best place to start.
Well, since we have time until January, I guess, to finalize the budget, I guess, I mean, I'll still be open to how some things play out with the clean water funding, but also I think it gives us some time to have some additional discussion about these priority areas and loading. And to your point, Mike, how would we get, moving towards those targeted element or areas. It's because I think I guess I feel there's plenty of work out there to use the implementation dollars. I guess I'm, maybe I don't have the detailed understanding of what everybody has on their plate, but my understanding that yes, Craig, you've had these direct drainage pieces ready to go, and we've understood those, at least I have, to be a pretty high priority area. I think the challenge is really going to be having enough staff to actually implement and oversee the construction element of them. So not necessarily spending the money.
Team, this is Derek from Licensee County. I had one question for kind of the group in general pertaining to Part C implementation actions, and then line item A, working with the LGUs for the shoreline corridors and potentially MIDS. I had a discussion with Barb and Bowser on this the other day. As a protection strategy for our portion of the watershed, we kind of talked about this from a Bowser perspective and a Licensee County administrative perspective. We're going through a reorganizational study, I've been told. And possibly a comprehensive plan amendment. What that entails, I'm not 100% sure, but the recommendation I would have for this line item is to utilize you guys as experts in the watershed who have, more adaptive shoreline management standards and or functioning well with MIDS to produce an outreach seminar of some sort this winter to do to potentially our commissioners and Pine County or those outlying areas that would like to see protection standards. And Bowser's discussion with me was to kind of focus in on this protection strategy as being a cheaper option than restoration for those portions of the watershed that are in high quality already. This is something I feel strongly about, but again, getting the administrative support for my portion of the watershed is going to be tough, considering they're going through this comprehensive study and or reorganizational study. So if the group is in favor of this to kind of help steer our portion of the watershed, I'm totally in favor of it and would like to see something happen this winter if possible.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When I look at the strategy for implementing MIDS, we're actually, the plan really puts emphasis on years 3 and 4, 5 and 6. But what we've learned in the past is that it takes a couple of years to ramp up to actually working on those ordinances. So I would be supportive of that. I wonder, Angie, would that fit just as a task that we identify under the shared education services?
Well, I think it actually even says that Oh, right here, under the mids thing, it says MREP lays groundwork in years 1 and 2.
Yeah,
So I
That's
think
what-
that is exactly what we were thinking, and that's the model that we've used in Washington County, that we spent several years doing this kind of general education like you're talking about, Derek, when we would have workshops and have the local elected officials and just be talking to them about the connection between shorelines and water quality and vegetation management and all these things. And then that kind of gradually got them to the place where they were receptive to having somebody come to them and actually start talking about zoning codes and ordinances. But it took a couple of years of building that relationship and the education base before they were willing to, willing to talk about ordinances.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, that's perfectly acceptable from my perspective, because if we start the education process now, then that year 3 and 4 would be ideal for the, kind of development and or adoption of the ordinances or ordinance amendments as they feel fit, obviously, as county administrators and board members. So if you guys, Mike, Instancy, and those others will be willing to, share some thoughts and ideas with me, I'm more than happy to help support that.
Just one thing to remember, everybody, the work plan won't be approved with Bowser until April. I mean, we won't have funding for this first year. So Derek, I know you mentioned this winter, but this program won't be up and going funding-wise, watershed-based implementation funds, until at least April of 2021.
Okay.
And then just to point out too, that line A, Angie, that you have highlighted right now, we've got 0 funds in that for the first couple of years. So is that not something that we would be doing these first couple of years?
Well, I think the intention though was that the shared education position, which is the next one down, that this one, which is being funded, would be doing the groundwork in years 1 and 2 for this, which would get funded in years 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Because it's a different person who would do it, like it would be a person like me who's putting it on workshops for just kind of laying the general education, where once it gets to the ordinance stuff, then it's going to be a different kind of person who actually sits there and goes through all of the ordinances line by line and tells them where they need to make revisions.
Right. Perfect.
Hey, this is Mike Kinney. I just want to add on that we had a pretty lengthy discussion with our board last night on this as part of our watershed management plan updates, and we're just losing the battle on the shoreline piece. There's just no hiding it. Forest Lake is probably at best 20% natural shoreline. The rest is, and even the city, when we had a meeting with them, they just said, well, it's a general recreation land or lake, so what's the problem with basically fully landscaped in the shoreline? So it's a major uphill battle, and as people continue to move out into these other lakes and start taking 3-season cabins and making them into homes, they want to do the same thing. So, how it might be something that even we have the policy committee start educating each other on, and that might get as much traction as anything, because we're kind of at a loss as to how to deal with our municipal partners on protection of shoreline.
I would agree with that statement, and the only reason I say this is I just had a phone call the other day, yesterday, in fact, about a gentleman on a wildlife refuge lake that's actually a part of the Realm River, but the lakes within Oxford Township and some of the outlying areas are very similar in nature, and with the urban sprawl up the I-35 corridor, there's going to be some impact in the future on some of those, and he hit it on the head with the general mentality of the general public is to turn a cabin into a lake home and fully landscaped and so forth. So whether we like it or not, that mindset is there. And how do we go ahead to change that mindset, or at least start the process? And I think it needs to start with our policy committee members, like he mentioned.
Yes, hi, and this is Susanna. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Yep.
Okay, great. Yes, and that is a concern in Chisago County, especially in the Chisago Lakes area. And there are recently many residents, especially who live on North Lindstrom Lake, who are very concerned about the clearing of vegetation. And so having that in the plan is great. And just, you know, overall, I want to note that how the funding is divided. It really matches the way that both Jerry and I had divided our funding amounts, or at least rated in the polunit.com, you know, rating scale. And so we're glad to see that those line up as well. And, you know, hopefully over time, then that shoreline view corridor is something that could be fully funded at 100%, because it is definitely a concern in the county and Chisago Lakes area.
Yeah, I'll just voice that for Carnegie Marine St. Croix Watershed District, this is a major issue as well. So we're seeing the same trend, and it takes a lot of funding and staff time and energy to even slow that trend down. And we have rules that prohibit transitioning shoreline to riprap, and it's an intensive process. So that's a great line item, and I think that the 25,000 is a good place for us to start as far as working together at a larger unit on a collaborative approach to how we can do a better job of addressing this more effectively.
Okay. Who else? Somebody from Pine County want to chime in and say how you're feeling about the way this is looking?
This is Caleb. I don't have any specific critiques. I'm satisfied so far.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. I like the way this is looking. So I'm pretty new to this though, but I do like the way this is looking. So thanks.
All right. So is there, if everybody is feeling like the way this budget is laying out right now, if you feel like this is something we could move forward with, then what is our next step? It's to put the detail in, really? And that's something.
So Craig and Jamie, are you willing to put together the package that we would then bring to the policy committee?
Yeah, I mean, we can work on that. I still think, and I agree with Mike Kinney, I think this is a good, I mean, we're sitting here the first part of October. In 2 months from now, we will know, I have an idea on clean water fund grants. I think during this time, all of us, and I've had some chats with people as far as projects for ag stuff. I do think it's something we need to get a better handle. I think Jay, you bring up a good point. Mike has too, and some different points that let's take a look at what we have for backlog. Let's see what clean water fund grants come available here or are awarded in December. And I think this is something we get ready in December to bring forward to the PC in January to start with. What's your thought, Jamie?
Yeah, I think so. And I wonder if we can, sooner than that, start filling in some of the milestones that Barb talked about, just right in the spreadsheet. Some of those milestones will be the Clean Water Fund competitive applications that may or may not get funded. And then in December, we'll be able to thin that list, hopefully, with secured competitive grants.
Yeah, this gives us the opportunity to, as Angie was saying, work on the details to make sure that everybody's really clear on what, you know, as we're developing the work plan and refining the language, that everybody's on the same page in what we're intending to do.
That was my goal after our PT meeting on Monday, was if we can bring this to the steering committee, get somewhat of a consensus. Other things we're way off on. It sounds like overall, I think people are pretty good. We do have some refining we need to do. Look at the Clean Water Fund grants, look at workload. But I do think we're at least getting in a direction that we can work with moving forward. And I don't know if the steering committee needs to meet again until December. If you guys, what the thought process is, the planning team obviously, or a subset of the planning team will continue to work behind the scenes, getting a lot of this stuff pulled together and massaged together. What's your guys' thought?
That was my question too, is when we think we need to bring the full group back together again.
So
Unless we make any significant changes to budgeting, my recommendation would have it go back to the planning team, and then we would meet as a steering committee after we know about the Clean Water Fund grants. So
Do we need to meet as a steering committee or as an actual advisory committee? We need to look at I believe it says the advisory committee will make the recommendation. Tiffany's shaking her head yes, I think that's correct.
Okay. And so that would be early December then, when we'll know?
We should know on the Bowser board usually posts their agendas a week ahead of time, so we should be able to know that information around the 10th of December.
Okay.
So
So,
if we shoot for a meeting that's that second or third week of December with steering committee, then we would have a good idea. We could quickly revise the budget to reflect the new numbers.
that's what I'm thinking, that we could go ahead, I can send out a poll after this meeting. We could go ahead and get it on the calendar now so that people are all available.
good. And then in the meantime, the planning team then can work on refining the details.
Yes.
Okay.
And whoever in this group wants to participate in that process obviously is welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Barb in the chat has given us a nice list of the columns we need to add to this table. And like measurable outcomes, that goes right back to what Mike was talking about earlier, and we should be putting that in the next couple weeks. As a
Yes,
planning
and then Barb's other question, how do the rest of the steering committee members propose stuff to the PT?
My suggestion there, Angie, would be let's let the steering committee make them aware of when we're meeting as a PT and have kind of deadlines. Hey, if you want things for the PT to review or discuss, if you could have that to the group, one central person, if it's you or whatever, by this date, and that would give us items to build the agenda around. If that works.
That's good. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, and I was actually wondering in between the meetings, once we have our measurable outputs in place, if it isn't an opportunity just to send out a simplified version of this table with the items that are funded and the measurable outputs in a column, and then have each organization put a column on, and then maybe just add to give us an indicator of what they hope locally to accomplish with the funds in that 2-year biennium, to give us an idea of where, because I mean, I presume when we do the work plan, we're going to need to identify those measurable outputs and also have some sort of an indicator of general areas where those are going to be going. And, you know, I'm looking at it from my perspective, and I see like two categories in here where I have potential projects or would like to have some potential work done through the SWA. And I heard Isanti talk about that they'd really like to, Isanti is a great place where we're probably going to be doing some targeted education for mids. So maybe we can start getting a better idea of those locations prior to our next meeting after we get this done, but do without having to have a meeting everybody again.
I think that's a great idea, Mike, because I think that would help a lot to know, you know, it just makes the conversation more concrete if we know what specific things we're hoping to get funded in different regions of the watershed. Okay then, well, we do not need to keep meeting if we feel like we have accomplished the task of the steering committee for the morning.
Matt Moore, could you make a motion to adjourn then, please?
No, hold on, please. I would like to add one more item to the agenda for the steering committee group.
Okay.
Jamie and I have been working with Shaw County Attorney Jeff Fuge on a memo for the Joint Powers Collaboration. So there's been some slight revisions to JPC. Jamie, do you want to take the lead on that discussion?
I'll need a second to pull that up here if you want to get started on it.
So we're having an October 26th, I believe, policy committee meeting. Is that the correct date, Ashley? With last Monday of the
That
month.
sounds correct to me.
There'll be a revised joint powers collaboration coming out for them, along with a memo that we are finalizing with the county attorney that will be coming to the PC. So are you ready, Jamie, to kind of go into more details?
Not quite. I'm still working here.
Come on, Jamie.
Sorry. I think we've talked about the changes before that we're going to make, but maybe a quick review of these is in order, and it'll be in the memo too. So I don't know how much detail we need to go in there right now, Craig.
I think it's just I just wanted to give the group a heads up, if nothing else, that it will be coming out at the PC meeting. And our goal is everybody has this on their board agendas no later than their December board meetings. Correct, Jamie?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And I think when the meeting packet goes out for our end of this month policy committee meeting, it's going to be a pretty important time to talk to your policy committee member before the meeting, talk through those changes. I don't think anything is really objectionable, but we need that meeting to go smoothly to set us up for you to have November and December to approve the agreement and do all the other things that your county commissioners or the SWCD boards need to do.
So just watch for those things. Like I say, when Angie sends out the policy committee meeting agenda here in 10, 12 days, make sure you review that
The
closely.
19th, October 19th will be the date that I should be sending that out.
So review that, please, with your policy committee member. Start getting that even. I have it on my board agenda for next week, just to start having those discussions. Make sure they're ready to have that discussion as far as coming up November, December. Start talking about your roles and your interest moving forward with this group. We will be finalizing the budget, obviously, and stuff, bringing forward to the PC. So really start having these discussions with your boards over the next 2 or 3 months, or plan on every month having these discussions or getting things finalized.
When do we need an actual resolution from each of the organizations?
We hope to have that stuff made available on the 26th of October to the PC, including draft resolutions. Right, Jamie? That's our goal still, I believe.
And it would be by December, end of December, that your board would take those actions.
Correct. And we'll have details at this point. I'm assuming you'll be sending those to the Chisago SWCD as the interim right now, but that's our plan, is get all this stuff collected. And we'll have a detailed memo. We have a multi-page memo that'll be coming out with this. The legal counsel memo, we're hoping, Emily, to come out at the October 26th policy committee meeting, so it'd be included on the October 19th board packets for the PC.
So
Craig,
Jamie and Craig just,
come,
oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
if you have a draft, could you send it out to the planning team? If you want it to go smoothly, I just, the one policy committee member that might, really look at this stuff and then bring stuff to the committee would probably be from our end. So I guess, yeah, I'd like to see things moving along, and so if there's anything to help facilitate that, I'd like to assist with that. So that's my recommendation.
Sure, we can. Let me just make sure with Mr. Fugi. I have not seen the final resolutions yet. We had drafts that we sent to him, and he's been working with us. They actually came from Bowser, correct, Jamie?
They did, and we're customizing them for our purposes.
Correct. And so the memo I do have, what I believe is the final draft memo, but let me confirm that with Jamie and Jeff, and then we can sure get that out to the PT to at least have their first look at it.
Do you want to just chat about the metro entities, Jamie or Craig, a little bit, just to, I don't have it in front of me, whatever the last version we sent you, because I wasn't part of that, or that you're working on, that there's a difference between adopting and replacing, and for metro entities substituting, right? We should say adopt and substitute for those required entities outside the metro. And then within the metro, what was the language that?
There, I won't say what the exact language is, because the attorney is still, crafting that, but it's essentially either use the One Watershed, One Plan, or I should say the Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan, as a guidance document or as a supplement, kind of one of those two terms, or something very similar. supplement to your existing local water plan, making it clear that it's not replacing.
Yeah, so I think, Jay, you're probably the only one in the metro who's going to actually adopt and replace or adopt and substitute for that area of your county. And I think for the rest of the metro, it will be that other language, because otherwise you would have two plans to work under.
Correct, but we still haven't figured out exactly how we're going to deal with some topics that might be a SWCD priority that aren't addressed in this plan. So we may have to have like an addendum or an umbrella, some sort of umbrella document in it, you know, to supplement the one watershed, one plan. And we may end up having to go to reverse, where we have a supplement to our primary account plan, which is the one watershed, one plan. Just to make it interesting. Plus we have to update our comp plan for the East Mississippi area, so that'll all be done at the same time.
Okay. So, Jamie,
Angie?
Craig, you just have in your mind that you're going to get me all the stuff that needs to go to the policy committee by sometime early in the day on the 19th?
Yeah, or sooner.
Or sooner.
Okay. Yep. Did I hear
Angie?
Matt Moore? Yes, I did hear Matt Moore.
I have to jump out here.
Okay.
So just so everybody knows, I'm leaving.
All right. Do you have any final parting words or just goodbye?
No, I mean, you guys are doing a great job as usual. So
okay,
we'll
Thanks,
figure it
Matt.
out.
Okay, everyone. Do we all feel comfortable adjourning our meeting right now? Feel good? Okay.
Barb, can reach out to Jay and I about getting together possibly on Friday for the meeting next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you,
All right.
Angie.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Enjoy the
Feel
sun.
better, Angie's family.
Thank
Yep.
you all.
Hopefully we
Take
will be
care.
soon.
Be
Okay.
good, be safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.